Right. Hello. It's a very cold Friday here. I think the storm we were supposed to get, I don't know if it's happened or it's overnight, but it doesn't look very stormy up there at the moment. Now, I've changed the field of view on this camera to a narrower one, just to see what that looks like, because I had it set to quite a wide one, for panoramic stuff. I'm wondering if it being a bit narrower might give me a bit more control over what I'm shooting in a targeted way, shall we say. I'm talking absolute crap really, I suppose, but anyway. It's really cold today. So, yeah. The subject today is going to be movie tie-in games. See, I always find something to record, something to talk about. But yeah, movie tie-ins. Now, I came across these, I didn't come across them, I started to play them back in the 80s on the Commodore 64. That had loads and loads of them. It was like literally hundreds of them, all available on the C64, and it was great. Remember one of the first movie tie-in games I played on the C64 was Rambo. Oh, it was brilliant. It was a bit of a Commando rip-off game, but I've got to say I'm going to break ranks with conventional thought here and say that I actually thought that it was better than Commando. I'll probably get some hate for that, but that's just my view. I thought it was better than Commando. I thought the music in Commando was great, but the music in Rambo was brilliant. It was the music from the film. Martin Galway. I think it was him who did the soundtrack to it. Did a really good job. Thought he did a great job with the soundtrack. And yeah, it was really good. Anyhow, as usual, I will see you all in the park. So, yeah, Rambo on the Commodore 64. Brilliant game. Brilliant music. The graphics were great. They're colourful. And I loved it. I played it to death. The point where I actually finished the game. It wasn't that long a game. I mean, to be honest with you, games back in the 80s weren't really that long for the most part, you could clock most of them in half an hour or under. I think it was about 20 minutes it took to beat Rambo. I mean, no one had put up with that today. But they were tough. I mean, I was pretty good at it because I played it to death. You know, I learned all of the levels, all of them. It wasn't that many. It was about 4, maybe 5. Who knows? There wasn't that many. And you learned what you had to do, and you could do it. And there were some parts you could do really quickly. Like there's one where you're rescuing, you know, in the movie, the guy who's tied up. You could just run to him, cut him down, level done. Because the enemies constantly respawned, so there was no real benefit to, you know, hanging around trying to kill them all, because they just keep respawning, as was the thing for video games back then. But I think say Rambo, yeah. Was Rambo the first, or was it Ghostbusters? I got them both at the same time, you see. It might have been Ghostbusters, you know. I might have played that first. Now that was brilliant. That was the game that really made me want to have a C64. It had a bit of speech at the beginning. The little thing would just go, Ghostbusters, and then start laughing, which was really funny. I mean, today games never shut up. You know, these days you can't get the bloody things to shut up, like I say. Back then, like speech in a video game, digitised speech as it was a huge deal, massive deal. It was like a rarity. The majority of games didn't have it. You know, they just had the music and that was it. So, you know, they were great games, but yeah, there was audio limitations because they were using actual microchips to, they were using actual chips themselves. They call them chip tunes these days, but yeah, I mean, they weren't spooling audio from a CD-ROM or anything like that. They were doing it directly from the chips. So, I mean, your audio on your modern day consoles, they're all pretty much the same, but like the difference between the sound on a Commodore 64 and the sound on a Spectrum was immense. The C64, sorry Spectrum owners, it's just a fact. The C64 had a chip on board called the SID chip, SID, SID, and it just blew everything away. It was that simple. It was great, but it had its limitations. One of the other limiting factors, as I've already mentioned, was RAM. The Commodore 64, when it come out, had quite a lot of RAM, but only like, I think it was like, is it 32 or 33k was available to the end user. Once the systems power in the C64 had taken the RAM, as I said before, the keyboard, joysticks, the tape deck, any peripheral that you had plugged in would take a tiny bit of RAM. And it was in the case of sometimes you had to unplug a printer. Say you had a printer plugged in, or you might have a floppy disk drive plugged in. I had some games, I kid you not, that I had to unplug unused peripherals to get the game to work, because it was using that much RAM that was left, that the tiniest overstep would result in the game failing, crashing. And you used to have that in the little instruction booklets you'd get. Please unplug any unused peripherals. Anyway, I'm going off on one again, aren't I? So, Ghostbusters, utterly brilliant by Activision. David Crane was the guy who made it. I remember all this. I'm not going that way. More bastards making a racket. Yeah, David Crane. Absolutely brilliant game. Had the Ray Parker Jr. music from the film. And he actually had bits from the film, and it was like, you know, multi areas to it. So you start the game, and funnily enough, this game is actually combined quite a few different elements. You know, for a game that was what, 1984, probably 85, 84 certainly, because that's when the movie come out. You had the management. You had to run a business like they were in the film. You know, they're running a franchise. And, you know, you start out, you can pick your car. Now each car would have its own strengths and weaknesses. You could get one which was like a Bug, Volkswagen Bug, and that was the slowest car, the cheapest car. And you could carry, you know, a reasonable amount of stuff. You then had the Ecto 1, the hearse from the film, which I think the one everybody wanted, didn't they? And that vehicle was a bit faster than the Bug, but it could also carry a lot more stuff. But it was more expensive, so you couldn't buy as much equipment, because if you ran out of money, it was game over. The bank foreclosed, and it was game over. So you had to be careful. You had to get the balance right to start with. You couldn't just, you know, go spending all your money, because any fail state costs you money. So once you've got your vehicle and you've got it all equipped up, you would then go out there and go to catch ghosts, and it would change to a map of New York, a very sort of small, rudimentary map of New York, but one nonetheless. And if you bought the PKE meter, a building, what the hell? What have I just like suddenly become German or something? A building would flash purple, and that would tell you that one of the Slimer ghosts was probably about to appear. Buildings that would flash red were the ones that were basically phoning up and saying, we've got a ghost. And then you would get in your car and you would head there, and then it would go to this top-down bit of your car, and along the way, there are ghosts that start out slowly moving towards the middle of the screen, which had a little Zool. That was Dana Barrett's apartment from the movie. And every time they get there, the PKE meter would shoot up, So if you moved your little Ghostbusters icon around, it would freeze them in place. And then as you're driving there, you would go around the distance basically from the top down map. You would leave a little trail of dots, and that would equate to the distance that you have to travel. So you have to kind of strategically think about it. You want to stop those ghosts getting there, but you don't want to take too long getting to the emergency place, because if you do, that ghost disappears and the PKE meter shoots up a little bit. So it's kind of in your interests to not allow that to happen. I get bombarded by a load of gnats. So as you're going along to the place where the ghost is, as you're going along there, you will see the little ghosts appear, and if you've got a vacuum, which was just basically an icon of a vacuum cleaner, if you've got that equipped, you can hoover up the ghosts, and that helps slow down the advancement of the PKE meter. The longer it takes that PKE meter to fill up, the more money you can earn. And you need that to buy bait, traps, basically keep functioning in the game itself. And once you've done that, you arrive at the destination, you get out of the vehicle, you set your traps down, and then you go to like this mini game where you use the proton packs and the proton beam to effectively trap the ghost, and then you fire the trap off and the ghost goes in a little box thing, little trap, and then you earn a bit of money. And as I say, if he gets away, PK reading will shoot up. Now this goes on, and then you start to get marshmallow attack, and that's where you need the bait, because when you suddenly the 4 little ghosts will suddenly zoom across the screen to a location, and you used to have to quickly bash the B key on the keyboard, and then that would draw them to you, and you would avert a Marshmallow Man attack. If you fail, if you're not quick enough, and believe me, you had to be quick, you would lose a stack load of money. It would bash up the building, and you would lose a stack load of money. Brilliant game. And eventually, you got to the part where you would get to Battle Zool, and that essentially was you just had to get a couple of your little Ghostbuster men into the building, into Zool's apartment, and then they would basically shut down the portal, sending Gozer back to their dimension of choice, and you'd win, and that would be it. And then of course what money you've got left over is basically your score at the end of the game. Simple, addictive, fun, and that's what games were like back then. Now I've gone into depth with Ghostbusters on this film tie-in episode because I say that was the first one I played. I thought it was Rambo. I got them both on the same day at Christmas, you see, but I think it was Ghostbusters I played first, then I played Rambo. So it's just old man memory syndrome. You know, it wasn't like they were weeks or months apart from getting them. They were basically got at the same time. Ghostbusters game case was great. It wasn't your standard plastic cassette tape. It was a cassette tape, but it was inside of this like a black vinyl case. It was kind of a bit luxurious compared to just the standard plastic cassette cases that you would get back then. It was quite eye-catching, even though it was just all black with the Ghostbusters symbol on and the 3 original Ghostbusters. Because in the movie, of course, like Winston Zedmore comes along a bit later in the movie. So you had Venkman, Ray, and Egon on the cover, which is a bit sad, really. You should have had Winston on there, you know, just because he came into the movie a bit later. I don't mean to say that he wasn't OG. He should have been on there. But what a great game. You know, when I've played on my Commodore 64 emulator, well, the C64 Mini is an emulator. It's not a real C64. That again was the first game that I think I booted up and played on that. And again, I just found myself putting hours into it. You know, at that point, I'd probably not played it for 20 odd years. And how quickly I sort of got back into the rhythm of it. You're catching Slimer is like a technique that you could learn, that you did it flawlessly. But it's absolutely brilliant game. And I say, going back to Rambo, that was brilliant as well. Great music, great shoot 'em up. There was great mechanics for games back then that were just based on simplicity. Awesome stuff. Absolutely loved it. And back in those days, licensed games for movies are actually very commonplace. You know, compared to today where they're not quite so common, back then they were. They were really common. And here in the UK, I don't know about the US, but here in the UK, I would say the main company was Ocean Software. Ocean Software were based in Manchester, not far from where I live. And I kind of had this dream, as it were, to work for them at one point, before I had then the ambition to work as a video game journalist, before being put off the idea altogether. So yeah, that was an ambition of mine. They used to run an advert in the magazines showing a guy stood in front of a Ferrari, and we're like, this could be you. Come work for us. This could be you. And then you speak to sort of any of the guys that were developers there, you know, then they've done the talks in subsequent years. None of them ever had the Ferrari. You know, no matter how good they were, there was never that much money in it. So always makes me smile out when you ever see that old ad that they used to run. But yeah, they were like the main mob, the main lot for doing this kind of stuff, and the quality did vary. You get some really great ones, like I say, you like Rambo, RoboCop. That is a legendary movie tie-in game. On the ZX Spectrum in particular, I have to tip my hat off to the Spectrum for that one. The C64 had great graphics, but it had a game-breaking glitch in it. I think I said it, I don't know which video I said it in, but basically you got past a certain level with a great deal of difficulty because the timer was too strict, and then the following level all the graphics were scrambled. You couldn't do it because you couldn't tell where you were going, so you had to use a level skip cheat, which was a bit annoying. But like I said, my friend had it on the Spectrum and it was better. I mean, it wasn't as colourful, but it was better. It played better. The graphics were, even though they were the usual Spectrum monochromatic, they looked better. They had a higher resolution. But more importantly, the game didn't break. You know, that's the decisive factor. Game not breaking is always going to be the thing that is the main key element. But it wasn't just movies, TV shows as well. Now, the TV shows, quite often they were the poor ones. They weren't great. There was an A-Team game that came out, and hell knows what it had to do with the A-Team apart from the faces of the four main characters of the show. But yeah, go and have a look at a video of that. The Knight Rider one I don't think was great, and they had some which I don't think got finished. I'm not too sure whether Street Hawk ever got finished. I love that show, by the way. It was absolutely ridiculous, but I love that show. And then there was Airwolf. Now, Airwolf was kind of a weird game. It was bloody hard, but it was strange. You're flying the Airwolf helicopter, which, by the way, looked amazing. Got the Airwolf music going, a great theme. But it was all really like sci-fi. You were flying in caves with lasers and stuff like that. It was bizarre. And I always got the feeling that that wasn't an Airwolf game in its concept, and that what they did was they stuck an Airwolf helicopter in there and just called it Airwolf. I mean, that... Oh, it's kicking off here. Go on, lad, have it. Oh, he fell over, that's embarrassing. He's all getting like... getting his stress on, and then he got a bit too stressed and he did a bit of a tumble in front of his mates while he's acting all Billy Big Balls. He's calmed down now. He's having that... No, it's too late. You drop your balls up, pal. You need to relax, man. So, yeah, it's the feeling I got was that they just used the license. They had another game that was probably, helicopter cavern attack or something, and then that was Elite Software that had the license for that. And then I think they just got the license for Airwolf, and they were like, lads, we've got the license for Airwolf. We need a game out really quick. And they were like, well, we've got we've got this. Right, well, make a Airwolf helicopter and stick it in there. You, Jimbo, do the Airwolf music, and off we go. Could be completely wrong, but that's just what the impression I got, because that game bore no resemblance to the show apart from the helicopter. And again, that game was hard, because you've got to fly through these caverns, but your helicopter was affected by gravity, so you constantly dropping to the ground. So I kept having to tap up to manoeuvre the helicopter just to stop it bloody crashing into the caves. And then you got things shooting at you. Yeah, it was a weird one, that. It was enjoyable though. I got that, and I got a game called Beachhead 2 the same day. That was at Christmas. I think that was it 85 or 86? Can't remember. But Beachhead 2 was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. That was like it wasn't a licensed game. It wasn't based on a TV show or a movie or even an arcade game. It was an original game, but it's worth mentioning because it was awesome. So yeah, and then there was The Great Escape, which of course was kind of based on the movie. That was really good. That was quite a deep game, that. And then you had Platoon. Platoon was a bloody great game. Graphics were fantastic. The music was awesome, and that actually took sequences from the film. And this was at a time where Ocean was really nailing it. You know, they'd really got into the stride, especially on the C64. The graphics were amazing on these games, and the sound was incredible. And the games, they weren't just platform or shooters. They had multiple elements to them. Another fantastic one was The Untouchables. That was based on the movie with Kevin Costner and Robert De Niro. And that was a bloody fantastic game. Honestly, it was so good. I mean, I'm only just naming a few here. There was many, many more. You know, I mentioned a couple of turkeys, and you know, but for the most part, I mean, I didn't really buy the crappy ones, to be honest. Why would I? I bought the ones that were very well received. But that was brilliant. Untouchables, Platoon. And they had one, Miami Vice. Brilliant music from the TV show. I really struggled with that game. I wanted to like it. I mean, it kind of looked pretty good. It was like a top-down view, a bit like the early Grand Theft Auto games. But could I figure it out? Could I? Hell, couldn't get anywhere in that game. But I still played it. Still enjoyed it. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I never thought it was that bad, in all honesty. And then you would get like really weird things that you wouldn't think kids would be buying back then, but you did, because we watched the films. There was an Evil Dead game, and that was like a little weird one. It was a top-down thing, and you were in the cabin, and you were running around. Again, God alone knows what the hell you were supposed to do, but it was a laugh. These stack loads. And of course, as like things progressed, you know, you get into the more high-tech stuff, you get some really good ones as well. I mean, I'm not even talked about the Star Wars games. The Star Wars arcade trilogy that came out which was basically an arcade conversion. And of course the arcades were based on the movies. Now, I've not even talked about them, you know. Weird. A bit ominous that way, and really bright that way. So yeah, as I say, I've not even talked about them. They were great. I had them on the, I got them on the C64, and it struggled a little bit with the vector graphics, but it was playable. And back then it was as good as what I was going to get, so I enjoyed it. I'm trying to think, like, you know, say coming right up to date, they did on the original Xbox, and I had it on the PC as well, was the Chronicles of Riddick. Now there was two of them. It was Escape from Butcher Bay, and what was the other one called? Was it Dark Athena or something? I don't know why that's in my head. But they were great. They were really good. Well thought out, well programmed, well executed, really entertaining. That's another franchise that sort of died a death, hasn't it, really? I don't know why. The games were good. I think they sold reasonably well too. I'm not sure. I mean, I never really paid, much attention to any of that back then. I was too busy playing the games. Didn't really care about all of that other guff. Of course you have your Harry Potter games. Most of them have been good. The Lord of the Rings games from EA, a lot of them were pretty good. I especially like the real-time strategy ones that they came out with a couple of them. They were very good. So yeah, just loads of them. Trying to think, what else? I'm trying to think of a selection, really. I can't. Off the top of my head, there's that many. I say some were good, and some were bloody awful. I'm going to think of some in a bit when I'm done and I get home. I'll go, oh, that one. It's always the way, isn't it? Yeah. Been some absolute belters down the years. I don't think you see as many these days, is because of the price of the license. Probably would quadruple the budget of the game. There's a lot of older games that are in license hell these days because you weren't able to renew the license, which I always think is ridiculous. I think once you've paid for it, that's it. That license should then be attached to that product, and that product should be able to be remade and renewed. Yeah, that's always a major bugbear of mine. These old arcade games like Outrun, because Sega don't have that. Sega would have to pay Ferrari a license again. Nah, bugger off. You've had it. Greedy bastards. That's what it boils down to. And that's why you do see a lot of these old-timey ones no longer become available, simply because the license expired. Somebody else gets it. Like, I think Warner Brothers have the Lord of the Rings license now for the games and stuff. I think they have that. It used to be Electronic Arts, so you're never going to see a re-release of the strategy games, which were brilliant. You know, they were a bit like Command and Conquer type games, but in the Tolkien universe. You're probably never going to see them, which is just crazy. You know, unless now EA have got this new ownership structure, they decide to pay a fee to enable a remaster, but I just don't see it. I don't see it. I hate the way that's happened. You know, it's consigned so many of great games to, you know, the void of licensed nightmares, just down to pure greed. But it's a shame. But yeah, I used to love those movie tie-in games, especially, say, back in the 80s. And, you know, because of the limitations of the hardware, they had to get a bit creative. That was always awesome. Yeah. So, that'll do for that, I think. Done quite a bit of walking, bit of a natter. This weather's holding up a bit. Some darker clouds coming in, but I need to pop now and go and get myself some bananas for my lunch. Run out, which is not clever. That's not the way forward. A lot of birds going on in them trees. Gonna go all Alfred Hitchcock, is it? Anyway, I'll call it there. Thanks for watching, and I'm just looking now. We'll see how it goes on with regards to the zoom. I don't know whether it's been too zoomed in or not. We'll find out in the video. If most of it's pathway, we'll know we've cocked it up. So anyway, I'll quit my rambling and get the hell out of here. So you'll have a good weekend, good day, and weather permitting, I'll see you on Sunday for the Sunday stroll. I might go back to that place again, and then again I might not, because it's going to be a bit of a nightmare underfoot in it. Anyway, see you later.